Scott, we're getting tricky. Urban style. Scott, you and I jumped into Urban Trials Tricky, and this is, man, this game's come a long way. It originally launched way back on PlayStation Vita, and they've iterated on it ever since, and the newest one now, Urban Trials Tricky, has kind of gone with a more, I want to say, cartoon-esque aesthetic. It's just a lot more lighthearted, where it kind of tried to almost compete with Ubisoft's title, Trials. Right now they're out on their own, kind of doing their own thing and made their own kind of genre and stuff. And they had a couple cool features, and the fact that you can actually turn your bike around, which on typical games like this, you only have as a side scroller one direction you're going. It's going from left to right, and that's about it. You get from point A to point B, and then you're kind of done that racetrack. Now they actually kind of have you almost in like an arena setting style, where you're capped at point A, point B, but you can keep going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And for me, after a while, I thought that I was done, honestly. Like, I did it and I had a good time, but it was a short time. And there's a lot of things to go in and customize and have a good time with. But for me, after a while, it kind of wore out its welcome. Scott, how do you feel about this one?
My first impression was, this looks like Trials, but very early on, you kind of discover it's not. The objective in Trials, as you say, is just to get to the end. Yeah. In this game, it is it's more tricky. There's a lot of different kind of game modes. There's some that'll have you just trying to get a high score, stringing together tricks while you navigate this little map. Others are a little bit of a time trial, where it is just like Trials. You're trying to get from point A to B, but it's an urban sprawl, so it's a little harder to navigate. And it's less about balance, it's more about timing and jumps and stuff. So it has a heavy platformer foundation. And Absolutely. I think that does this job really, it does the job really well. And it also gives you the ability to get kind of better at it as time goes on. My favorite game type actually was the competition one, because it gives you a trick to achieve. And you achieve that trick and it gives you another one and it just kind of keeps going that way. And you eventually, in all of these game modes, you just try and get the most tricks done in the set amount of time you have, and that gives you a rating from 1 star to 5 stars. And those stars actually become relevant towards the end of the game, because you need so many stars to open up the next batch of levels. And there are quite a lot of them too. I'm not sure on the exact number, but I want to say there's about 50 different levels.
Sounds about right.
And it went on quite a long time, actually, because, as you touched on, there's not a whole lot of staying power in this one.
No.
It's, you get in, you realize what you're doing, you get good at doing the tricks, in my case, and I just sped right through the game. There is a lot of customization, and I think that's really interesting. I spent most of the game playing as a giant banana.
Oh, you got that skin, did you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I held on to that one for a long time. That was some fun. I like that it wasn't taking itself super serious.
Absolutely. I think that's it, Scott. Is that it knows what it is, right? And like you say, it didn't go on the serious route that we've seen it take in the past. And it went more on the light-hearted side of things. But for me, it kind of missed one element, Scott. And I think it really would have helped kind of the longevity of the game. And then there's no multiplayer. It's a single player experience only. I think that's where the game really kind of misses its mark a little bit for me, is I'm doing all this jumps and all these stunts and getting new gear and things like that. But once you're done all that, what's left? Nothing, because there's no multiplayer aspect.
No, and you are encouraged to go back and replay some maps sometimes if you don't have enough stars, for example. In those instances, there's a ghost of your prior attempt that you can kind of race along with, and I thought that was interesting. But it reminded me of Trials, where you're racing everybody on your friends list.
Yeah.
And there's some far more competitive feeling just having those ghosts there. One thing that's not very various or exciting to me was the soundtrack. It was pretty forgettable, and a lot of the time I found it to be a little annoying, actually. Of course, it's not the music that I would listen to, but I don't find it very effective at being a backtrack. It certainly isn't something the likes of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
Yeah.
That would have been a much more interesting kind of sound behind it, and it could have amped the excitement up.
Absolutely. Scott, hitting my jumps and stuff, it kind of landed a little flat for me. At the end of the game, it just seems a little empty. It's fun while you're there, but it's short-lived. And for me, puts me at a 6. What are you giving this one?
I feel what you're saying, actually. I jumped into it. I got more into it than I expected, but it was very samey and repetitive, and that really seriously hurt the engagement. Found myself at the end very quickly. It just doesn't have very much detail in the way of gameplay. The graphics are very basic and kind of cartoonish, as you say. Yep. The audio track was not adding to it either. I'm there with about a 6.5. It was fun, but short-lived.
Nice.
Urban Trial Tricky is a satisfying and simple concept with a lot of customization. It is unfortunately very short with limited mechanics.